Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today on Sunday Soul Day, we have Zach Chandler, who I announced last week. He is a certified dating and relationship coach. Welcome, Zach. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I appreciate both you guys making space for me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. I don't want to not do your intro justice, so please tell us a little bit more about yourself.
No, I mean that's really it in a nutshell. But it's so much more than that for me, and I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of the whys and what really has brought me to the forefront of the dating and a relationship aspect of life coaching. Um, but I began my career working with, well, let's just say that my career landed in my lap. I began working with at-risk youth and then foster youth in my career for almost about 20 years. Learned that it was my bread and butter. I some days miss it dearly, even though it's just really a lot of um, it's a lot of chaos that some people aren't really ready for. But I loved it. I loved the kids that I worked with, and I always had a passion for relationships. Um, I felt like to some degree the aspect of working with kids was in some way serving my inner child, if you will, of the things that
Mm,
I had experienced in life. And I wanted to do something that was really just um, more internal, something I wanted to give back to the world in a different aspect. And so I took a unexpected plunge in a different direction, and it's really worked out. I was one of the few people when I went to I completed my Jay Shetty certification school that really knew walking in exactly what type of coach I wanted to be. So
oh.
I have a passion for love, just like your hat,
Yes.
which I
I'm
love.
I'm repping Zach's brand here, and he has an Etsy store that will be sure to link um, down below after. But definitely check out his merchandise because we all love it. That's amazing. Yeah, Zach and I were in the same cohort at the Jay Shetty Certification School. And we had a little bit of crossover in some of the sessions, but really got to spend some time after we graduated from our certification school, and just think the world of Zach. He's just awesome, and
Thank you.
super excited to learn a little bit more about him. But tell us like a little bit about like that transition from going from, working with at risk, youth, and then um, becoming a relationship and, dating coach.
So it's a great question, and I feel like the path was sort of created a really early age, and I didn't really get back to it until I realized as a young adult, like I had choice, and it wasn't I was really getting sick and tired of the 9 to 5 life I felt like was choosing me, or rather that I was choosing, and I wanted to navigate my own path. So um, in 2018, my father had passed, and one of the conversations we had prior to that was, I've been doing this longer than the traditional 2 to 3 years that most people last in the field of working with at-risk youth, and like I feel like the kids need it more than I need. They need me more than I needed the career. And that was sort of the passion fatigue, the end of the road for me when I felt like I've given everything. I've given everything to this job and to these kids, and it's well over 1,000 kids that I've been able to hopefully feel like I've served. But I just wanted to do something different, and I remember telling my father I wanted to open up a matchmaking business.
Oh my
So
goodness.
uh, moved out of California into Omaha, Nebraska, where my wife has family, and applied for a job as a dating coach and matchmaker. And I learned a lot about the business, a really prestigious company in the Midwest. But I learned that I didn't really necessarily like matchmaking, and I really loved coaching. I had a few clients I got to work with that I just fell in love with the one-on-one connection on how can we get you from being lost, confused, hopeless, and just feeling an immense sense of pride and accomplishment in doing it yourself. And as I began to kind of head down this path of like, how can I fuse all of my passions and my experience into this, I recalled like a few moments in my life outside of my like likely terrible dating history of just making all of the wrong choices, which is probably my true resume of, what not to do. So now I know how to help people with that. But I remember, I don't know if this was maybe my local newspaper or if it was more of a national thing, but there was this article in the newspaper I used to read when I was little, like, I don't know, maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, called Dear Abby. And it was an ad in the paper. And I just found it so cool that this lady would just answer questions and tell people what they could do or just offer a different perspective. And I read nothing but that in sports. And that's all that I really read. And I just found it really interesting, and then, you know, I just began to, as I got older, I just began to make a lot of choices that I felt were really kind of putting me in the social work field, and I didn't necessarily want to head down that path. I felt like it was really a place where I'm strong, but I really found a big passion for helping people find love, and I think I didn't necessarily make that strong connection until, you know, I met my wife, and I realized, oh my goodness, the day that I remember seeing my wife on our wedding day, and where most people, their first thought is, "You're so beautiful," and this is so. We got married on the beach in Hawaii, and it was like probably would have been, someone's first thought is, "This is the most beautiful place," and I can't like, but as much as I thought all of those things, don't get me wrong, if she's gonna watch this, she's gonna hear me say that I did feel all of those things. But one of the things I remember feeling like is, I can't believe I escaped so many bad decisions and
Mm.
people that just weren't right for me. Wonderful people, but just bad timing. A lot of what I've been able to understand is that a lot of these people were there fixing unmet needs that I didn't realize that I had. And I think once I stepped into this beautiful marriage, I realized like this is it, and I never felt deserving of that until I met my wife. And it pains me to think that there are people who have just completely given up within a relationship they're unhappy in. Um, and this step out of working with at-risk youth it's been hard. I worked with foster youth as well, but I'm imprinting everything I've learned on being able to see people for who they are, the experiences that they faced, because where we worked, it's not what's wrong with you, it's like what's happened to you, and being able to look at that and have conversations, um, about what we've both the traumas we've experienced, and have a little bit of empathy.
Yeah.
Uh, so, Zach, thank you so much for sharing. How do you see trauma affecting the dynamics of human relationships? And what are some common patterns or challenges that you've observed among your clients?
Good question. Yeah, I think some of the challenges that I feel like I I see that people experience is sort of the self-fulfilling prophecy and the limiting beliefs of, I think, therefore I am. Um, this is something that I thought would be entirely different when working with adults who are looking to find love. And, I'd work with kids who were in gangs and had really tumultuous upbringings with whether it's their community or their environment or their families, repeated abuse. And I didn't really think that this is the mindset that would continue into adults who are now feeling like, I'm just not worthy of love. I'm not worthy of finding happiness. And most of the problems and patterns that I would see in working with people is really like, I'm in my own way. I'm not able to find love because I just don't think I can find a better job, and I'm miserable at my job, and it's my biggest pain point in my life. Um, and I think that in working with um, both young adults and clients now as a certified dating coach, it's a lot of the problems that and challenges that I see are sort of one and the same. These are things that haven't been healed. These are things that we haven't really done the work on ourselves to understand. and they don't just stop. The kids that I worked with who are 17, I said goodbye and best of luck to you. That doesn't just stop at 17 years old. You carry that into your adulthood. Um, and I feel like a lot of the work I work with clients on is the recognizing the gap between who they are today and where they want to be, and doing all of that work in between. Because where they want to be is attainable. If someone's there, you can be too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Are there any specific techniques or strategies that you find particularly effective in helping individuals or couples navigate the impact of trauma on their relationships?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to speak to the difference between coaching and therapy. I'm a huge benefactor of both, a huge proponent of both, and I'm never afraid to encourage clients to step into coaching or therapy. Certainly, coaching, we scratch a little bit of the surface of what's going on and what's happened. Therapy is really a great place to dive extremely deep to do a lot of that work. Um, so I'm not afraid to encourage clients to partner with a great therapist. There's also a lot of therapy through insurance that is free if it's telehealth. I do it. I have it every Monday, and it's wonderful and it's incredibly healing. But then what I bring to the table are, um, unique and creative practices that you can actually implement. A few that I really, really love. Um, I think everyone should get in touch with their understanding of their own attachment styles as well as their partners, and have those really uncomfortable conversations. Um, and then an exercise I really love is being able to take what your triggers are and understand, what are my triggers, why do they happen, where do they come from, how do I respond to those triggers, what could I do differently, what am I capable of doing, and do I maybe not have an answer. And I say that because, oh sorry, I say that because we might we might have, in the world of dating, there's a lot of conversation about what are red flags, right? And sometimes those red flags are more preferences than they are deal breakers. And I think that's a big conversation that we have a lot of the time. But I think when you can recognize that red flags truly should be designated for things that are either triggering and traumatic, or things you simply don't have an answer for. Um, I have my own challenges and my own relationships in my life where I may just not have a solid answer to respond to this type of behavior, even if it might seem small to someone else. It's something that I'm not gonna, this is not gonna work for me. Um, and maybe I'm just not prepared with, I don't have the arsenal yet to deal with that. Um, and then I think it's a really great way to then look at, when you break that down in columns, to look at, wow, it looks like every time I face my triggers, I draw inward. That's my response every time. So it's really helpful for clients to break down and understand like their own patterns of behavior. Additionally, I have this exercise that I really, really love. My wife and I did it. And it's a five love languages activity. And what we did was we drew the five love languages out of a hat, and each week we had a different one. And obviously, it became pretty apparent who had what within a couple days, but it was really fun because we got to explore what we liked, what we didn't like, what our partner does and doesn't like, where our partners might have fallen short, what we were interpreting as, maybe this is how I wanted to receive this act of love. And then it really just naturally allowed us to explore trauma. And yeah, I was never really told that I'm wonderful growing up, and that's why I really like words of affirmation and things like that. So it really allowed us to ask, like, why do you like that? Why do you expect this? Why is it important for you to, have this type of love expressed to you? And so that's an exercise I really, really love, and it's fun. It takes about 5 weeks, and then you have a fun little get together, and you talk about, I know that gifts was okay for you. I really just wanted a slice of pizza when I came home, and that would have, whatever. So I love it, and those are strategies I think a little bit more on the lighthearted side of really diving into talking about what makes us who we are.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so
It's
much.
so much
That was
fun.
amazing.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you for sharing those. I love the exercises and tools. I also work with the 5 love languages with my clients, and it's just so fascinating to see that often what we want to receive is different than what we give. And just seeing where it comes from maybe childhood or different experiences. That's great. And then I loved hearing about your the red flags, and even if they're small, they're yours. I think that's a really important tip. Um, how do you work with clients who may be resistant to exploring their own trauma or past experiences?
Yeah, it's I think that's sometimes where um I always ask for permission on, how do you like to be coached? What is your preference on feedback? Because there are going to be clients who are going to say, this is just not where I ever want to go. So if we can look at the analogy of the goals that you're trying to achieve are a mountain, but in the mountain is a volcano. Our goal is to not have the volcano erupt, but we'd like to stand at the top and look at how beautiful. It might be really hot, but to stand at the top and look at this beautiful volcano and have a wonderful, wonderful view, I guess. And my job as a coach is to say we're gonna get there. And if you want to go up the backside of the mountain, there's lots of rocks. It's a lot steeper, but we'll get there quicker. If you want to take a longer route, we can go around the other side. There might even be some scenic views, but it's going to be a process to get there because it's going to be where we might actually touch on other things that you don't like, and we might end up hitting the other side of the mountain with the rocks on the other side. So it's really like understanding that everyone's going to be resistant to hearing what's typically the most important feedback you have to hear, which is always the hardest.
mhm.
I'm never comfortable telling someone what they don't want to hear if they're truly not ready. So I'm really big on asking permission. Are you okay with hearing some thoughts, some clarity, or some feedback? Um, again, just referencing therapy again, I think therapy is a great place to encourage if someone feels like maybe I'm just not the person that we want to do that work with. Maybe we just want to keep hiking. Um, but I also know that clients who work with me are there because they want to work with me. And that's something that I'm big on what we called in working with kids as pre-teaching. So it's the idea for those who are watching this and their parents. I'm going to tell you that the stove is hot. Please don't touch the stove. So when we touch the stove, it's not like, so the stove is hot. We've discussed this. So I'm going to give you constructive feedback. I'm going to tell you things that I see when I see them. I'm going to ask you if I'm seeing this correctly in ways that things might be similar. And you're always welcome to tell me I'm incorrect. And we can also stay away from things. Coaching is a mutual relationship where I am there as a support system to guide a client to wherever they want to go. So if they truly are not interested, it's a place to really ask, are we still focusing on the goal that we want to get to? Because it's very possible that the pain point they're experiencing, they might just not be ready yet. They might have to get higher up the mountain to come back and say, I think I'm ready to talk about that. I also recognize that I'm a human being too. I've worked with a lot of kids that have loved me, and I've worked with a lot of kids that didn't. And it might be that in this moment, we haven't built enough trust yet, or there's always a potential that they've come to a place where they realize they need something different. And my goal is to help the clients get to where they want to be, whether it's with me or without me. And that's okay too.
Yeah, that is so, Zach, you're so amazing. I love that you really shared the importance of therapy and coaching. And it's a large reason why Allie and I wanted to do this together because she's a licensed therapist and, I'm a certified coach. So, and we do think that there's just incredible benefits in both. And I know it's really helped me tremendously, open me up in a lot of ways, along with coaching, which I've had many, many coaches throughout my professional and personal kind of growth. And so just love that you said that. What are some before we kind of keep going down the questions, what are some I guess traumas that you discovered in your therapy that maybe showed up for you in your dating life?
Oh boy. One stands out more than anything else, and I realized that I dated my mother my whole life.
Mm.
And that's not to say um, that when people do that, it's a negative. I mean, I think they were all beautiful relationships, and then a lot of things that I was trying to gain out of those relationships. Every way. I was actually talking with a friend about this last night when he was trying to understand what is my coaching, what do I do, um, and he's known me since 2000. We went to college together, and I was actually telling him, when I look back, if you could think of every person I've ever dated, especially the she's who won't be named in this conversation, they're all my mother, and I think that there was an element of my mother growing up that I realized was a bit emotionally unavailable. So I dated people that I look back now and realize they were either in some way out of my league or emotionally out of my league. And that I was trying to conquer this element of, if I can just get the love I feel like I deserve from you, I can feel that I've conquered and accomplished this inner child, this unmet need of feeling like I did it. I won over the person that no one can seem to get close to, or who has no time for anybody. And so I learned a lot of that in therapy. I also learned, just jumping over into coaching, I learned from one of the amazing coaches in our program. Um, I was never really big on affirmations. I used to believe that affirmations were things you told yourself that you actually don't believe in and you want to convince yourself you do, until we jumped into it sort of accidentally. And I think that was his strategy, is we're going to just do this. And I know it's going to work for you, but I recognized that I had deep rooted traumas and fears and challenges. And instead of catastrophizing and telling myself all of these things that I was essentially living through twice, once in my head and once potentially in real life, that I needed to tell myself three really strong phrases for myself that really um, lent itself to empowerment when it came to anxiety, fear, and rejection. And I use it every day. I have a really challenging relationship now, strained and estranged, if you will, with my mother currently as a result of the aftermath of my father passing. And one of those simple things is telling myself that I'm worthy of love before I open the mailbox, because it hasn't been anything pleasant or nice. And I have to, um, I just have to remind myself that the work that I do in therapy is extremely powerful. And one of the things I'm working on currently in therapy, which I find so empowering now, is that I'm in such a good place of receiving that what I want to do is actually take my childhood and my adulthood and sort of stack them on top of each other to say, where am I exhibiting the same behaviors and things I've shared about my childhood and things I'm doing today? So I can understand and draw those lines that I've been talking about with clients, that this is something that didn't stop when I was 17 years old. I continue to do it now, but I now know that in those moments I can have the choice of doing something I feel like protects me, or doing something different because I'm realizing that it imprisons me. So it's really, really amazing. I absolutely love it. I'm so fortunate that insurance has shifted and the mental health field has shifted to where therapy is now not a cost. I pay $0. It's just, my therapist is incredible. And yeah, I think that everyone should be doing both.
Wow. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing.
Great.
I know you and I talked privately about that, so I really appreciate it, because I think you will help so many people just recognize those challenges. And, I, similar to you, like looked for partners that were similar to my father as well. And so I think when you have those unhealed, traumas in you, it does yourself a disservice, like in dating. And so and I'm sure you encourage your clients as well. I date myself, to work on healing and to work on and really doing the work, before taking all that, which we all do, into relationships. And relationships are like mirrors. So they will hold up a mirror for you. And vice versa, you'll be holding up a mirror for them, and it tells you exactly where you are. So thank you so much for sharing. Would love to shift gears a little bit and just talk about like what are some of the most important qualities and skills that individuals can kind of cultivate in order to build healthy and fulfilling relationships despite some of these traumas and past experiences that we talked about.
Yeah, so in my coaching, I feel like there are three important aspects of the entire process. And I'm big on things happening in threes. So I believe my branding is three colors predominantly. So
Tell us about that. Tell us
yeah,
about it.
yeah. So my branding is it's as you can see, the heart that you have on your head is actually a custom color I make because it's so hot where you live. You needed the mesh top and the yellow for your brand. But my colors are actually it's purple, green, and blue. I really wanted something that was a little bit softer, lighter. I felt it gets a lot more mental health friendly. Being a male dating coach, I didn't want to approach this field with, the bright lights and the black and the red and and present myself in a way that only attracts male clients. With what I guess in the industry, they're a lot bolder colors, and it's a lot different of the style of coaching that I feel like I offer. I work with anybody, anywhere, anyhow, don't discriminate for any type of a reason. And I feel like my colors also just really represent my like my soft approach. Oh, I didn't realize I'm wearing purple. So yeah, my soft approach. But your question, I'm sorry, could you repeat?
No, it's okay. It's okay. No, I was just asking like what are some like important qualities and skills that kind of individuals can cultivate to build healthy and really fulfilling
Yes.
relationships despite these traumas.
Yeah, so the three, yeah. So accountability, I'm sorry, awareness, accountability, and action, I feel like are really important for me. I feel like you can navigate really any challenge that you're working through if you have the awareness of yourself first,
Mm.
the ability to be accountable, and then you're willing to take action. A lot of us stop at one of those checkpoints because it's hard to be aware when you realize like you are in your own way, or I mean, the moments I would sit with clients at this matchmaking job, and they realized, oh my gosh, like I'm a guy that I worked with was like, I'm living with my parents. It was just a minor detail. And then when he realized like that is the biggest piece for him is that he's just depressed. Like I live with my family. 34 years old. I need to move out. I need to like, this was the biggest pain point for him. It's feeling like I just feel like a grown up kid. And having that awareness was like, it was heavy, and then being accountable for the fact that, we can now take steps to get there, and then taking steps towards action to do that. And I think that really plays into every aspect. Speaking of threes, the three type of clients that I work with, and they're three very different types of people. So I work with people who are looking to attract love better, a better, healthier type of love. I am working with people who are trying to keep it, not to not lose it, to keep it, to really build strength in the relationships, and connect closer. And then really spawned out of the last 4 years and the challenges I had with my mother, really wanting to help people navigate relationships, whether it's you and a parent, you and a child, you and a coworker, you and a best friend, a loved one, and just really recognizing that sometimes those are the most challenging because, and I don't know if there's a better way to put this, but I will always be the child of my mother. I will always be grateful for the things that I've had. I will always be pained a little bit differently from the transgressions that we have. And it's as much as it can be a choice to have a relationship or not, there are some things that are not my choice. I can't choose a different parent. I can't choose different family members. And relationships that are choice are really hard, when people are struggling with understanding, like, to sever a relationship or friendship, something that they don't necessarily need to be there. So when I work with clients in that aspect too, all of those things apply if they have the awareness that they're in a difficult relationship and they can be accountable for what they're doing. Um, and they're willing to take steps and action towards maybe having hard conversations. All of it's applicable. So those are the three most important things for me to work with clients, and that's what I talk about. Really, like out the gate, it's the first thing we discuss.
Thank you so much, Zach. I wanted to ask you, what are some of your routines or rituals that you do for fueling your soul?
Lately the business just fuels my soul. I'm so passionate about it. Um, but I'm not, in my 20s and dating. I am happily married and I have two beautiful girls and they fill my soul. It is the time that I spent with them that rejuvenates me, exhausts me. Um, it gives me everything I have to not only teach them to have healthy relations. I actually talk to my daughter all the time about the love languages. And in fact, yesterday we had a big meltdown and we talked about what would matter to mama to make her really happy. Because we weren't so nice. And she was like, acts of service. She doesn't want to have to do the dishes when she comes home. And so she did the dishes all by herself. So they really fill my soul. I think that I feel like I want to answer your question twofold by saying the things that I do to fill my soul are very different from the things that fill yours. And when I talk with clients, we talk about this, the idea that your pie chart should never just be one person. My wife is not the only thing in my pie chart. Neither are my kids. I have things that are just for me. It's been hard to find time for a lot of things being a parent, but I love softball. I love fantasy football. I play guitar. I have a lot of things that I need to tell myself, just take it out of the bag, just play 20 minutes. I write poetry. These are all things that I have in my tool bag to do and enjoy nature. It's Florida, so it's hot a lot of the time, but when I can, I would take Disney days by myself and just do the things that I like. And I think it's a huge thing that people overlook when they're looking to get into or in a relationship, that it entirely revolves around them. And that's when you find yourself in a codependent relationship where everything's broken when it's broken. And so I think that the things that fill my soul um, are really unique to me, and they shift and change, and they're often dictated by the neediness of my children. But it's just so important to do things that are exclusively me. There's me time, and there's me and my wife time, me and my kids time, me and each of my kids time. It's really important that that exists. There's a space for that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Good question.
Yeah, I love that you touched on codependency and how not one person can fuel our soul, and how we have to do that for ourselves with the things that we love. I mentioned in our last podcast that my husband and I actually met at a support group, and the support group was a codependency recovery
Wow.
support group. And after we had both been in some relationships that we would call dysfunctional, but we were also dysfunctional before, we got the tools that we have today from that recovery.
That's the
So
mirror for you, right?
now we live by that, the recovery playbook, to have a loving relationship with an equal partner. But we both have to show up each day and fuel our own souls. I talk about the relationship hierarchy. I'm sure you know about that as well, as that relationship with something bigger than ourselves, or that relationship with ourselves, and then the relationship with our partner. And then that can spill over to all our other relationships. So I wanted to ask you, what was your turning point that awakened you to live your life for you?
It was losing my dad. It was the most devastating part of my life. I never, so when I worked with kids and I worked with adults who worked with the kids, I trained at a state level, an agency level I laugh about it now, but I taught grief. I taught the grief cycle. And I feel like I totally screwed it up when it came to me. When I say grief is a cycle, it's a circle. Like there's a diagram. Those who work in the field understand it. Um, and grief doesn't happen that way at all. I was uh, not fortunate to have that experience because grief doesn't happen in a bubble. My father was in 2018 was um, heading into a Walmart to pick up purple balloons for my mother, who wanted to be um, a grape for Halloween, and he was walking through the two cars that are parked, and got through the last two lines of cars, and a kid dropping off a friend, a 17-year-old kid, not paying attention, turned left into the lane and hit and killed my dad. Um, it, yeah, just as simple as you could step on someone's foot and push them over. He didn't have the chance to brace himself. And as much as it took about 48 hours to finally pass, that was it, and today, to date, I still don't actually know the official time day that he passed, but October 28th for me was always the day. It's the day that I got the phone call from my mother, and I wasn't afforded. In fact, I often feel like my grief was stolen from me. The first year I was jumped into the service role that I had of taking care of my mother, reaching out every single day, which wasn't normal. How are you? And and then we had life changes. We moved out of state, as I had mentioned, and then moved again to Florida. And my mother began to date and pursue new relationships, and it was hard for me. And at that point, like I had mentioned that we had a conversation about matchmaking, and I don't even think I mentioned a dating coach at the time, but um, we were sort of also on the precipice of having like the conversation we had never had as a family. A comment was made around this time that I felt like was offensive about my childhood that I was never able to talk about. And I was gearing up to having sort of I want to rip my parents a new one conversation until that call with my dad. And I decided, I think I just want to call and tell them that I love them. And how hard it must have been for him to know that on the other end of this call might be his child ripping him a whole new one about his childhood. And he's still here offering me advice and just saying, yeah, you got to follow your heart and do what you want to do. And he lived by that. My father was a stage 4 prostate cancer survivor. And when we had heard about that years prior, he was like, no, you're not leaving. You're going to stay here and live your life and pursue that. He lived by a mantra he got from a cruise ship, which was an acronym SOAR, and it was stay positive, one step at a time. And the last one, which I love, is and rock it till you dock it. And I just thought it was so powerful. But in this process of navigating grief really alone, I was eventually cut off by my mother in the process. Um, and I really think, having an awareness that she suffered a great loss too, I really just think it was, I had to understand what narcissism was, what I guess really toxic parenting looked like, and really look at wasting years after grief of just sinking into this emotional hole of depression. And I just kind of gave up, and it took me a while to really build the strength and realize like I think I'm a pretty good person at the very least. And I don't think I've maliciously tried to hurt anybody. I was suffering a great deal, an immense deal that took a huge toll on my life. And I just needed someone to ask, are you okay? And feel like part of it was also about me. Because we all lost. I know, Misha, you and I discussed this, that when people lose people, oftentimes, well, all the time, I believe, nobody loses the same person. We all lost a different person within the same person. And I think until I was able to actually be told I don't have a space for you in my heart anymore by my mother, I realized, you know what? Well, I do. I do, and that space is reserved for people who want to be here. Sort of like, and ironically, um, it's like when someone says, I'm just no longer in love with you anymore. I don't feel that way. I think we're sort of in the process of how do we either coexist as friends now? How do we move on or move away? That was sort of a come back from that type of emotion that I've never really felt before. And I'd seen a lot of really hurtful, destructive behavior, parent to child, in my lifetime that I recognized through therapy. But it really just made me realize that I am either going to stay down or I'm just going to get up. But nobody's going to save me.
Yeah.
My wife has her own challenges in her life, things that she's working through, and I need to be supportive to her. And I do not want to repeat the cycle. Um, I want to be a generational change maker in my family of this type of behavior. And I don't want at the time before we had our second child, I didn't want my only child at the time to be like my father was absent my first 5 years emotionally. Um, and the more aware she became of life, the more I realized she could become more aware of this experience for me. And that was unacceptable for me. And I think it's so ironic that she is the logo of my brand, because I mean, I have a 6 month old as well, but she's the 6 year old heartbeat of our home. And it really shaped my decision to really just decide I'm actually in charge of everything in my life, from my mindset to the choices I make and the life that I want to have. And the imposter syndrome that I experienced in stepping into this space really was just one person saying, you don't know what you're doing. You can't be a life coach. You can't help people. It's all that I've ever done. It's all I've ever done from an early age to my professional life. My life was built for this, and I didn't need anyone to validate that for me because I've been validating it my whole life. It just was time to stand up.
Absolutely. Wow, Zach. I mean, so many things to just take away from what you said. Your vulnerability is just so beautiful. And, you know, I can't imagine with all the transitions that you've experienced from, losing your father, moving, then just having an estranged relationship with your mom. And then also showing up for clients and being of service, it really requires us to do the work, and you sound like you're doing the work. You're I always say starting from the most authentic place, which is just honest with yourself. And so you're such an inspiration to us, to the people watching, and I'm sure your clients as well. I just thank you so much for sharing. I wanted to ask you, like, what are some of your, like personal aspirations? Like, I know that you said like you're really working on not, being, kind of repeating the cycles and breaking those generational curses or, but also what are some of your professional goals that you're striving for?
Um, I think on the surface, I want to completely change. I want to change the language around dating and relationships. I don't feel to me like it's riding the wave of mental health into the romantic aspect of people's lives. It is trying to be in the front of that entirely. I met with one of the top matchmakers globally a couple weeks ago, and discussed that just the awareness of how this just isn't conversations that people typically have, not only with the professionals but when they're meeting people. We don't talk about this a lot. People don't want to wear a sandwich board to say these are the things that I've been through, and they shouldn't have to. But I want to change the mindset of dating, especially in such a fast track world now where you don't have the whole idea of having to wait, I don't know what, 3 days and call up on a landline and ask to speak to someone doesn't exist anymore. You can get a hold of people like that. And people are dating fast and quickly and have options. It is window shopping at its finest, and it's hard for people to feel entirely satisfied. Also, while in a relationship, I still can't believe that in such a transient city that is Orlando, I met my wife 13 years ago. It just total diamond in the rough. And it blows my mind that it even happens in the city for anyone, because Orlando is just a tough place to be when you're looking for love. But
How did you guys meet? If you can just tell us really quick.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it was super wonderful. I was on a boat and then I fell off and she swam me to, actually, no, I'm kidding. That's the Little Mermaid.
Sure.
But no, no, it was at a bar. It was at a bar downtown in Orlando. I actually was blown off on a date, and called a friend and said, "Let's just go out. This is not this sucks." And so we met up, brought a couple friends. He brought her, and I just was like, I don't know who this is, but this is the only person I want to know tonight. And she happened to be in transition as well. She was moving back to California, and it really allowed us to really honestly just get to know each other, knowing this is a short timeline. We're just going to go on some dates, hang out, have fun, and enjoy the time that we have to connect. You know, she wasn't here too long, and it turned into 18 months of long distance after there, and then we moved. She moved to New York to keep it going, and we so I have a strong knowledge on long distance relationships too, because it was hard. Um, but yeah, there was magic there, but yeah, it was beautiful. Sorry, I digressed there.
No, no, it's perfect. So
I feel like you were living it for a
yeah,
second.
exactly. I know.
Yeah. Oh, it's just amazing.
I
Just
love
lucky.
Yeah, but it's like love
Um,
at first sight for you, you know, it's like you hear
oh yeah.
these stories and, sometimes when you haven't been dating for a while, I love that you share that because it can happen.
But I don't think I answered your question, so I think we
That's
have to go
okay.
back.
No, no, you were starting to, but it was great. I just wanted to know like what are some like aspirations that you have,
Oh
like
yeah.
whether they're personal or career.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. So I have some really exciting ones that I don't believe in keeping my secrets in terms of what I want to build, um, because it involves a lot of connectivity. So when I worked with foster youth, we used to do the summit in San Diego. I worked for a really amazing organization called Promises to Kids that served former foster youth in pursuit of their post-secondary education. I helped build a mentor program, so those students who maybe you or I would have mom or dad to call, come to graduation, or this is the job I just got. A lot of our folks had nobody. So connecting them to a mentor for the rest of their life was a beauty. And some of them were like, oh, it's me and so together. We're just, grabbing wine down by the beach, because they're adults now. It was beautiful. And they used to do the summit every year, and it was a summit for professionals and for, recipients of services. So we had like rooms filled with professionals in both the mental health field, the education field, students. So students could meet students could meet professionals, support systems, and professionals could meet each other to collaborate. And I want to replicate that in my niche, however you want to say it. I want to create a seminar slash retreat at some point and bring in the biggest players who are in the field of whether it's life coaching, dating coaching, relationships, matchmakers. They have matchmaker conferences every year. I'm not invited to those yet because I'm not a matchmaker, but I will get my in. And they collaborate and find ways to help support each other. But it's a very cutthroat business. So it's like we know each other, but we're real. I'm not sending you clients.
Yeah.
I feel like is a lot of the culture, because it's really competitive and you can work from anywhere. We as coaches, as I'm sure you know, if I have someone that fits a little bit more of what you're doing, I'm going to just send them to you.
Yeah.
If I feel like they're going to gain from you better, I want the best for them. So I want to create something like that where people can go, like, single guys, single girls, can go and support their journey of finding love. And I want it to be a place where people can also connect with professionals for hire, and then professionals connect to each other. And I don't exactly know what this will all look like, but I want to find a way to have this be a big giant yearly production. I just feel like the industry needs it, people need it, and it can benefit everyone in a different way. That's
That
the big goal.
Wow,
So,
like that's
yeah.
amazing. And it sounds very similar to some of the goals that I have. So you and I should definitely talk. Um,
You definitely, you
I
could
would
be a
love
speaker, 100%.
No, I would love it because I want to build a community as well, with coaches, because I just have benefited so much from having coaches throughout my entire career. And so I would love to, somehow be a part or help you build this. We'll talk after, but
And
amazing.
and I also want to say, because I I may not be the most equipped with the most updated language. I also want to make sure that not only with this event I'm trying to plan, because I know that it's an extremely difficult pocket of service, or it's a very minimal pocket of services to offer the LGBTQAI plus community. I want to serve everybody. When I said that earlier, I'm serving everybody. So I want to speak to that also with the clients that I currently work with. One of the things I learned when I worked at the matchmaking agency was that they didn't serve anyone outside of heterosexual couples. And I think a lot of that was simply the nature of request. Um, and they're just not being, you can't start a database with one person if there's only one person who's felt like that they're in their database. But I want to make sure that I am open to and deserving in any capacity, whether one-on-one coaching, the work that I create. So when I said boys and girls, I also mean everybody. I want to be very inclusive, especially to the transgender community. I have one of my friends who I discuss this with regularly, and he's like, it's we just don't have resources. We don't have support. We don't have anyone looking at us. And I really want to make sure I am a constant learner, both about what I offer, how I say things, and knowing that it is going to be constant imperfection of me trying to just make sure that my services, both large and small, are inclusive.
Amazing. Wow. Zach, thank you so much for sharing. Ali, before we find out where we can all find Zach, do you have anything else you want to add or say to Zach?
Thank you so much, Zach. Yeah, I'm in awe of what you do. It's definitely needed. I love that you are looking at it from an inclusive lens. Um, and how you mentioned the five love languages, and even beginning it with your children, like teaching the five love languages as young children, and how they can show love just in their friendships or towards their teachers and towards their families. I think that that's amazing. I don't have any other questions. I just am excited to learn more. Um, and thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And you're right. I think when I knew we were having a kid the first time, I remember my wife constantly being like, "Why are you in the boys section at Target?" And I'm like, "We don't know yet." And I was just like, I have three brothers, so I was like, I'm just getting ready. And when we had a girl, she could tell you, I was like, I have no frame of reference right now. When I worked with kids, anyone would tell you I predominantly work with the boys. I don't have sisters, so I just there's a language that I wasn't understanding. And my girls are teaching me. I'd say my oldest daughter, because my little one is 6 months and she doesn't know. It's mama, dad, dad. That's it right now. But my oldest daughter is teaching me how to raise a kind, sweet, compassionate, loving person, and let alone just understanding girls. And it's so wonderful for me because there's a legitimate concern and fear I have in understanding how she might potentially be treated, not only as uh, a female, but she is a female of two different races. My wife is from Trinidad, and she's going to be. We used to have foster youth experience this a lot. Kids who felt a bit like tweeners. I am Hispanic, but I live with a Caucasian family, so I don't really fit in here. I don't really fit in with the people that I believe I look like, and my daughter is on the more light-skinned side, and I feel like she's going to have a lot of challenges growing up. And so I'm trying to build her strength, build her awareness of herself, and I think that my brand is representative of that, and just understanding that if you're looking for someone to tell you exactly what to do and how to do it, almost automatically, That's just not what I do. I want to be a strong and compassionate leader in the industry and show that you don't have to that you can enter the dating world and enter relationships with love and empathy and treat people as you'd want to be treated. Because I really know it's very cliche, but we're all experiencing something right now today that no one has anything or no one has any idea about. And I believe that when people sit across from a table, whether on a first date or the 300th dinner in your marriage, that we're very different. And one of the last things I wanted to include, it's another exercise that I would encourage both of you to do when you have time. If there's someone in your life that you love, whether it's a loved one, a partner, a spouse, is we used to do this with the mentors we worked with. And you take the amount of time that you've spent with this person and then the amount of time that they have been alive, and you can figure out how much you actually know them. And we would find that some of them will be like, oh, they've known me for 1.3% of their whole life after a year, because I've only taken them to 4 Padres games in my lifetime. And that's all the time we've ever spent. So I've known them for 6 months, but I've only known them for 6 hours, and I think it's really important when we connect with other people that kind of, as you had mentioned earlier, we aren't actually dating ourselves, even if we would like to. We're dating other people with whole entire, like, when you wake up in the morning and you realize I get to have a day completely orchestrated by whatever I'm creating in my life, there's another person that's doing that as well. I don't know if you've ever heard the word sonder, but that's what the word sonder means. It's the awareness of someone living an equally different life as yourself. And I think we just don't think about that. And we're very selfish and self-serving, and we don't understand why things are happening to us and not around us. So thank you for all your amazing questions. You guys have been really, really, really thoughtful in the things that you asked. So I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. And I know just through the example that you're leading for your daughter, for your clients, that you're building that confidence, courage, love, compassion, empathy, all of those things, because you exude it. So thank you so much for coming on Sunday SoulDay, and being one of our first soul fuelers. And I know that you're going to be fueling a lot of people's soul today. Where can people find you?
So it's really easy. Every social media handle that I have is Love Coach Zach, and that's with an H, not a K. So LOVECOACHZACH, Love Coach Zach. I also have a LinkedIn, but that's just my name. I also have an Etsy store, which you guys, I believe, are including at some point. So if you want, I actually have one behind me. This is more of my brand colors, but like something like this. But right now I have a handful of my hats on my store, but I also allow for almost inspired by your choice and the many others people asked for, custom colors that people want. I'm willing to do nationally only. But yeah, Love Coach Zach. It's where people can find me. Look me up on social. I'm pretty much everywhere.
Amazing. And you also have a website too. So I will be sure
Yes,
to link that as well.
that's ZachChandler.com. ZachChandler.
Yeah, and you can go ahead and book a discovery call with Zach. And thank you again for coming on, and appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zach. Happy Sunday, everyone.